To paraphrase a quote I once heard in college, when it comes to art and design, you don't necessarily have to be original, you just have to be good. This philosophy has never been more true than in the ever-expanding world of Japanese animation. With so many new anime coming out every year, it often seems these days like new ideas and original concepts are becoming a rarity. Everything has already been done to death, and nothing original ever comes out anymore. At least, that's a common conception. Whether or not that's true is up for debate, but even if it is, it's certainly not going to stop the anime industry from continuing to be interesting. With each passing era, what new ideas we do see often result in other works that take inspiration from such ideas, and even then, creativity still plays a vital role in the success of these works. Originality is not always the main goal when it comes to anime. Sometimes success can come in the form of expanding upon an idea set up previously, or even just trying to do it better. Sometimes a work can exist to pay homage to an entire genre while simultaneously presenting it in fresh and new ways for the current generation. And finally, sometimes the only real goal of a given work is to take its own inspirations and have fun with them. Some anime really aren't striving for greatness, they're just looking to give the viewer a good time. And sometimes, those are the anime that I have the most respect for. Hello my friends, my name is Brian, and welcome to Nerdword Reviews. Today, we're taking a look at one of the most unambitious, most derivative, and ironically, most enjoyable anime I've seen all year. So before we begin, I must ask you all, is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? The title question is asked in the fictional country of Aurario, a fantasy setting where magical beings, monsters, and deities are about as common as humans, if not more so. Residing in this world among the humans are gods and goddesses, who have descended from heaven to earth to live and cooperate with the humans by offering their divine power to those who need it for the sake of their occupation. You see, one of the most dangerous yet increasingly popular careers in Aurario is that of the adventurer, one who fights and defeats monsters for a living. In the center of Aurario is a tower known as the Dungeon, home to countless amounts of dangerous creatures like goblins, dragons, and minotaurs. This is where adventurers go in hopes of killing these creatures and obtaining crystal shards within their bodies, which can then be exchanged for cash. To maximize efficiency and profits, adventurers often group themselves into teams known as familia, each of which being represented by its own god or goddess. Bell Cranel is a young adventurer who's very new to the scene, and is the only member of the newly established Hestia familia. Being the naive, foolish boy he is, he begins his adventuring by traveling way farther into the dungeon than a beginner ever should, and has a near-death experience because of it. Fortunately, and just in the nick of time, Bell is rescued by the legendary sword princess, Ise Wallenstein, a member of the Loki familia, who just happened to be in that section of the dungeon as well. Upon seeing Ise up close for the first time, Bell is absolutely smitten. He's head over heels in love, but despite this, he quickly begins to see Ise as unapproachable, given her reputation in comparison to his. With that in mind, Bell decides to take it upon himself to become more experienced as an adventurer so that he can one day become as strong and competent as her, and only then will he confess his true feelings. Aiding Bell in achieving his hormonally induced goals is the goddess Hestia, who uses her divine power to boost his stats between each new adventure. That is, when she's not taking part-time job after part-time job to pay off all the debt she owes for the new equipment she invests in for Bell. If that statement didn't make it obvious enough, Hestia cares a lot about Bell. She does have romantic feelings for him, but what's even more important than that in this relationship is that Hestia loves Bell like he's her own family, and will do anything she can to make him happy, even if that does mean helping him power up to work toward gaining the affections of another girl like Ise. But hey, even then, that's not going to stop her from being the most jealous little brat imaginable whenever the opportunity presents itself. Other characters include Lily and Welf, Bell's teammates who join him later in the series, as well as other friends and acquaintances that he meets and associates with in his daily life, like Aina, his advisor, and Seer Flover, a cute waitress at one of Aurario's most popular hangouts. There's also Ise and her familia, and the other gods and goddesses. It's a pretty nice little world with a sizable cast of characters. However, even with everyone else in mind, Hestia is the show stealer. Any moment she's on screen is usually the defining moment of a given episode, at least that's what a quick Google search would have you to believe, and her outstanding presence has made her so iconic so fast that I'm almost concerned. In addition to this, Hestia has got to have the most researched and developed character design of any anime character I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure her design covers just about every otaku fetish under the sun, and she's even got that silly boob string gimmick to boot. Point is, every single aspect of Hestia seems to have been calculated and manufactured to such a high degree that she achieves the ambitious goals of the artist and becomes the ultimate waifu. Now, is she my waifu? Well, let's just say I have more dignified tastes. I'm also a pretty big fan of Bell as a main character. Is he anything special? No, he's not. In fact, he's a pretty generic, stereotypical anime protagonist. He's overpowered as all get out, and despite actually being dead set on one romantic interest, he still manages to gain the affection of every girl in Orario. I mean, of course, right? It is a bit annoying to see that these days there's like this checklist for main character qualifications in anime, but I think Bell pulls it off pretty well. Throughout the series, he maintains this sense of innocence, genuineness, and a passion for continuous growth, as opposed to other overpowered MCs who seem to have all the answers from the very beginning. He also actively points out and comments on certain tropes that apply to him, so in a way he kind of breaks the fourth wall. Overall, he's a likable character that I can root for, and truly does feel like a proper RPG protagonist. Whoops, there we go, I finally said it. Alright, so let's go ahead and get right to it. Danmachi is an anime that is quite heavily inspired by interactive entertainment, and quite possibly even other anime that are heavily inspired by interactive entertainment. It's where half the criticisms of this show come from, it's what makes the series feel derivative, and that's just not going away. However, this aspect of the show is something I can heavily enjoy. The fantasy world itself works pretty well, especially considering that it's an actual world and not just a virtual reality. It makes the anime really feel more like a traditional adventure story, and unlike in other cases, the world itself is not actually necessarily the primary focus. This one is all about the characters, and that's what makes the story as engaging and fun as it is. Danmachi has an endlessly entertaining and lovable cast. Yes, you could draw direct parallels when it comes to some of them, but honestly, I don't think that should matter. They are still good characters, and honestly, in most cases, they turn out to be even better versions of their pre-existing counterparts from other anime. For example, Aiz Wallenstein here might just be Asuna again, but she's really just Asuna if Asuna were a good character. What I'm getting at with all of this is this. Despite being derivative of previous works, Danmachi is able to stand out by taking the tropes that inspired it and doing them really, really well. It all adds up to a charming, fun, and mostly light-hearted adventure story. The cute, cheeky presentation is even reflected in the title itself. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Does that sound like the title of a show you should be taking seriously? Danmachi is also a series that's good at presenting its message in satisfying ways. At its core, it's a shonen action series, but unlike other works of that genre, which tend to favor Deus Ex Machina power-ups and mindlessly explosive combat, Danmachi's style of action offers a heavy emphasis on skill. This is reflected through Bell, who is able to learn new techniques and incorporate them into his strategies for effectively killing monsters. The sense of learning, growth, and progression is certainly there, and it gives the series' action sequences some actual intelligence to them. These scenes are about as good as it gets. They're well executed and exciting, and the actual level of violence can actually be pretty surprising at times. There's some serious blood and gore with some of these monster deaths, and that's not something I'm used to seeing in anime like this. At first, you wouldn't think the violence would mesh well with the lighthearted characters and atmosphere, but somehow it does, and it's surprisingly gratifying, honestly. I don't know, I just really dig the stylistic choices and production values for this series. It's just a pleasant anime to watch, and I know that sounds weird to say about an action show, but that's really all I got. There really isn't much else to be said about Danmachi that hasn't already been said. It's a perfectly fun, competent, enjoyable series that can really do no harm. As far as video game inspired shows go, this is honestly my favorite one, because it actually knows how to have fun with its characters, setting, and premise. That's all I can ask for in a seasonal anime that I literally picked up on a whim. I'm not gonna lie, I started watching this series to begin with because I thought it was going to suck. I expected to have a very ironically good time with it, but I ended up having a very genuinely good time with it. It's perfectly fine to see a work be creative in humble ways, especially if the production quality itself is good. With that in mind, Danmachi is every bit a success as it was probably setting out to be. No more, no less. And it really does seem to be making a connection with fans. I mean, we probably just have Hestia to blame for that, but hey, it's still something. In the end, guys, don't listen to the haters on this one. I recommend you go out and watch this series. It is rather comparable comparable to other works, both in terms of positives and negatives, only this case features more polished positives and less obstructive negatives, due to the series' apparent sense of self-awareness. And I almost forgot to mention this before, but in addition to that, it really is an anime that has a lot of heart to it, making it a series that's not just cool, but also really sweet. Being such an all-around good show, Danmachi is perfect for new fans of anime, and is also a nice watch for anyone else who might be interested in this genre. If you go in with an open mind and unspecified expectations, I'm sure you'll find yourself having a good time. I know I sure did, and one other personal recommendation I can give is that you watch this show with friends. It really is more fun that way, at least from my experience. This really is an awesome, adorable little series that I think should not be missed. So, to bring things full circle and answer our original question, is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? The answer? No. No, it's not. In fact, if that's not your main goal when visiting a dungeon, then you're just doing it wrong. And on that note, this concludes today's episode of Nerdword Reviews. This has been Brian from Nerdword Entertainment, and I will catch you guys later.